take breaks, go for a walk.
Yeah, see, I always need to do that, like set the little break reminders, because I get so tunnel vision into something and then like 3 hours passes and I've not like looked around the room. You do need reminders, don't you?
You do. We're going to cover a little bit of that today, actually.
Are we? I'm excited.
A bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
So
I'm very
this has been such a like big journey for me personally as well, because I think I have ADHD. I think everybody is on the spectrum, right? Like in some, like everybody is like neurodiverse potentially in some way. So I'm leaning into it in a really big way, because I do find that when I get like hyper focused on something, I'm in, and when I'm not interested in something, I find it so difficult to then get in the zone. So much of that has fed into the way that I do things now, and I think it's really helped with boundary setting. So we're going to cover a little bit of that.
I am also the exact same. I can't focus on something unless I am crazy, like mentally excited about it. So it's
like the stars have to align, right? Like everything has to fall into place in order for something to get followed through. I hear that.
Yeah. Why we like this. But anyways, I'm excited to hear the tips. So the best way I'm thinking this can go, are you happy to have a little Q&A at the end? So if anyone has any questions, I'm thinking either just like write them in a little chat box or write them down and you can ask them at the end, whichever works. And then you can just go through all your amazing jazziness. I'm so excited to hear all of this, because I think everyone at the moment that I speak to about social media, Instagram in general, is just finding it hard. It feels like we all know that, especially if you have a business, or like even more so if you have a business, you need to be on it. You need to be like present and doing things, but it does almost feel impossible sometimes, and it feels overwhelming. We're getting told different updates all the time. Like we don't really, even me, like I actually work in marketing in social media, and even I'm like, what am I doing half the time? Like it's a mess, and it feels like a mess, but really hoping you're here to tell us that it doesn't have to be. So yeah, give us all your tips, Nicole.
Okay, so the way that I tend to do this, because I am by nature a person that always has questions, what I'm going to suggest that you do, just because once I get stuck in, I kind of have to keep going. So I tend to structure these kind of like classes. So I'll run through, I've got a couple of slides. We're going to do a bit of learning, a bit of like collaboration. I really encourage you to get pen and paper or type notes, whatever you want to do, however you work best, just so that this is as useful for you as possible, because it's so easy to sit and listen to somebody for 20 minutes, leave, and then do sweet fuck all. And also, I swear, I hope that's okay, it's in the slides as well, so if it wasn't okay, we're really fucked. But yeah, love learning, fantastic. So I'm going to really encourage you to actually get stuck in and look at what you're doing at the moment, so that you can really hopefully take away as much and as much value from this as possible. And we're going to keep it interactive, so we're going to do some slides at the beginning, bit of learning, and then at the end I tend to keep it fairly open, so you can ask questions, or we can actually do kind of workshop style stuff, so we can actually look at some of your profiles. Swearing does show passion. We're passionate, we feel strongly about things. Also massive ADHD, I get so distracted, but I've got separate screens, so we're gonna be fine. So we'll do a kind of workshop session at the end, and we'll do questions. So I'll run through the slides first and then dive back into the chat and speak to you guys. So if I have set this up correctly, which I hope I have, I'm playing around with using Canva's slides functionality, which I like the idea of, but I don't know if I love the UX of yet. So we're going to just test it and see how it goes. And we don't like the screen sharing. Can you guys see anything? No,
not yet.
Well, in that case, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to do it the way that I usually do it. So I'm going to stop sharing that.
I'm the worst with like Zoom and Google Meet and like, like the tech of it. Like now I'm pretty sure it's recording, but also who knows, but I think it is.
We are recording.
Oh my gosh,
that
amazing.
Side of things I'm covered on.
Woo.
So, okay, this is what we're going to do. Look, right, let's open it this way. And I'm going to view it at the same time as you guys. So present full screen. Tell me you can see things.
Perfect, we can.
Amazing. Well, that's great because I now can't. God, what a wild day we're having. Present full screen. Present full screen. Can we see some slides?
Yes.
10 out of 10. Okay, right.
Oh, perfect.
Let's make Instagram way less stressful because social media shouldn't feel like shit. So this is a new-ish kind of thing that I have created, which is a bit of an amalgamation of some talks that I've done before, but just packaged in a way that is designed to be a meeting of the brains. So if you're anything like me, I have got the creative side of my brain. I'm very much kind of the type A person as well, though, in that I like things to have structure. I need things to have structure because I need the accountability. So this is going to be a little bit of how we can create structure for ourselves to make things way less stressful, make them a bit more strategic, and give ourselves more creative freedom, because that I find is the first thing to go. The second thing starts to get stressful, all creativity goes out the window. I can't write, I can't design, my brain is like in a fog. So that's the goal for today. So this is my first time meeting all of you, well, for the most part. And your first time probably meeting me. So just a bit of context on who I am and what I do. This is me. This is what I look like when my hair is, oh, I'm wearing the same top. Great. This is the difference when I look like I've showered. So I have worked in social for about 6 years now. I have a business called 5 to 9. During the course of my career, I have worked with a load of different brands, some of whom are on the screen here. So Bumble, Treatwell, Google, Well-to-Do. I used to work in the wellness space, which came off the back of working at Sweaty Betty, which is how I met Lydia. But alongside that, I've also kind of grown this really fun consultancy where I get to work with mostly female founders on everything from actual content creation, so a kind of more done for you approach where I'm a social media manager and I actually manage things for them. But what I'm shifting towards now is a much more guided process. So what I'm seeing as of late is that the best person to manage your social media and drive your brand forwards is you at the end of the day. And there are times when that can be outsourced. There's a time and a place, but especially in the early stages of your business, having the face of your business be you is the absolute best way that you can do it. So Well-to-Do, I was very much an integrated part of their team. For anybody that doesn't know Well-to-Do, they have just been bought, but they used to be this really epic kind of wellness platform that did news, investment news. They were kind of the one-stop shop for events. And I got involved at every single level of the business, from like creating the reels at their events, creating the content for their events, the promo, to website copy. For Bumble, I used to be one of their events ambassadors for Bumble Beers. I don't know if anybody's used that. The events were actually epic. I feel like the actual app never took off, but the events were like 10 out of 10 and the merch was to die for. Treatwell, again, I used to do a lot of content creation for them. And then Google, I was much more strategic and I worked with their marketing teams on specific executions. So I'm that classic person that was the wearer of like many, many hats, right? I feel like I've done everything under the sun and it's very much a jack of all trades. So that has kind of guided where I now advise clients. So as much as I say that I do social media management and consultancy, it kind of sits under this bigger umbrella of how can we kind of zoom back out of this and look at the bigger picture. So great, we're focusing on social media, but have you also got everything else set up so that all of the effort that you're pouring into your social actually makes sense? So that's a little bit about me. You can also find me at Nicole Marguerite Gray if you would like to follow me. I am, this year, I'm putting this out into the universe. I'm taking my own advice. So I'm kind of on this journey with you a little bit, in that I'm actually starting to do my own marketing because I've been word of mouth for way too long. So a couple of things that we're going to go from, and I really want to, I dive into this so that we can really understand kind of where we're at and where we want to get to. And again, this is coming from a place of experience. So these are all things that I have felt myself and gone through and struggled with. And this is just a couple of steps that we can take to actually bring ourselves back out the other side. So I don't know if you felt this. I don't know if you are experiencing this at the moment, but the anxiety of logging onto Instagram or sitting on TikTok and looking at other people's content and thinking, oh my God, could I use that? Could I try that trend? Maybe should I be doing this? Should I be posting more regularly? I feel like I've seen that person's post already, but they posted yesterday. Oh, I should be posting more. an endless, constant stream, a vicious cycle of getting really in the weeds with it and just feeling really stuck and essentially being paralyzed by it, right? Like you can't log on even just to look at your friends' posts without feeling like, oh, I should be doing something for the business. I should be focusing more on that. Why am I not doing that? It's crippling. So we want to take you from there and get you to a stage where you're making really deliberate strategic choices with your socials. So everything is much more business focused. We're removing the ego. We're removing all of that kind of imposter syndrome when it comes to your social media and making it much more cut and dry where it should be, right? So there's a time and a place for the creativity, the personality, the fun. But ultimately, if you are growing a business, you're running a business Instagram or even your personal Instagram, which is the way that I do this, but on behalf of a business, there are a lot of areas where you can remove yourself from it and you should remove yourself from it to get out of your own way. So we want to get to a place where we're really deliberate, really strategic. I do this all the time, frantically browsing for inspo and getting really stuck in this like really early stage of not even creating content, saving other people's posts. I have so many posts bookmarked on Instagram. It's unhinged. I've got folders for them. It's ridiculous. I've been there. I still have all of it. It is useful. There's a time and a place for it. But if you're getting stuck at this stage, we need to bring you out of it. We need to get you to a point where you're not constantly looking at what other people are doing, because that really brings you into this cycle of comparison. And I don't know how many of you have done kind of the mindset work, but that's always going to be a really difficult space for you to be in. And it's not where you're going to do your best work. And then, yeah, similar kind of thing, right? Paralysis when you're creating and posting your content. There's loads of different stages of the process for you to get stuck at. And this is where I think a lot of the stress comes in. It can come at any of the stages, right? Whether you're creating, whether it's right before and you've spent ages creating the perfect post on Canva or recording a reel, and you get to that point of like being ready to post, but then you haven't written the right caption or you're overthinking something. Stress can happen at any of those stages. So we want to make sure that we're pulling that back out. So I want to make sure that you're getting to a place where content feels a lot more comfortable. It feels a lot more flowy. I'm probably going to use the word flowy and vibey a lot in this talk. I didn't realize I said it so much. And then I watched something back of myself and I realized that it's basic, comes up every other word. So first kind of exercise where I'm going to encourage you to be really thoughtful and maybe write some words down, and don't judge yourself with this. Don't overthink it. How does your Instagram feel for you right now? This can be bullet points. This can be just like words on a page. Just sit with it. If you think about Instagram for your business right now, how does this feel for you? I'm just going to give you a sec to do that. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. And we can circle back to this right at the very end, right? But have that there, keep that in mind. So some of the most common challenges that I see in terms of things being sticky and feeling very stressful usually can sit somewhere within these four categories. And it might be a combination of all four. It might be more one than the other, but it's usually the amount of time that you spend on the app, feeling like you can't keep up with the trends that are going on at the moment, the actual content creation process, which can also feel really sticky, or as I said earlier, actually posting the content. So you get to the very end point and you're like, I can't post this, it's not right. Could be any one of these four, might be a combo. See, consider for yourself where you'll sit if it fits under any of these umbrellas. So if we're getting stuck on those parts of Instagram and that's where the stress is, we're going to dive a bit deeper. So why does this feel sticky? And again, relate to these how you see fit. Look at your own text here, see what works. But usually time on the app is usually because of a lack of planning or boundaries. So really focus in here, dive deeper. It's not just about so we've looked at the feeling. Why are we feeling that? Why is this coming up? What's the actual root cause? So lack of planning or boundaries. Usually the keeping up with trends is because we don't know where to look. Usually creating the content comes from either a skills gap or a creativity gap. And I'll dive more into what I mean by each of those things in a minute. And the actual posting of the content, which is something that I have struggled with massively, is overthinking. And that's one of the hardest ones to overcome, right? But all of these are equally valid challenges to have. but we can look at them. So the big thing that I want to stress to you here, and why I really encourage people to actually dive more deeply into these things, is this is what takes us from the stress over here to something that is actually solvable, because stress, because it's this big problem. And I'm really trying not to sound like a therapist here, because I'm not your therapist. This is how we get to the strategy. So I want to take us from something that feels really big, scary, and like horrible and unpleasant and sticky and just impossible to get out of. It's like goo, to something that is actually a really structured business challenge, essentially, that you would look at the same way that you would tackle anything in your business, like a financial planning issue or an invoicing issue. You're like, okay, how do we fix this? So it becomes something that we can much more easily address. And we love that. So all of these things have a solution. All of these 4 things we can fix. We cannot fix the goo. We can fix specific problems. So just so that you know you're not alone in this, I went through this process last year. So I spent so much time, I mean, arguably over the last like 6 years, right? My business has grown. I was really lucky previously that a lot of, well, this is still the case. I have a lot of referrals, so I have never needed to do much marketing. So I basically never practiced what I preached. So I've been telling people what to do on Instagram, never doing any of it myself. I'm just that person that pops on, gets a bit stressed, and then pops back out again. So I used to spend hours looking at a blank content calendar. I would try so many different formats. I bought all of the free templates, downloaded all of the free templates. I tried paid resources. I did all of these different things, but I wasn't getting anywhere. I could not possibly tell you the amount of time I have spent working on things in Canva, only for them to just vanish into the archives because I get stressed about actually posting them. I'm like, oh, it doesn't fit with the grid that I've got going on, or I can't write a caption for this at the moment. The timing's not right. Every excuse under the sun to actually never use the content. And all that actually happens is that nothing changes and things get really stagnant, but everything is happening in my head up here, right? It's just like this really awful fog and stress thing. Now I have reached a place where I still have a content calendar. It's needed, it's necessary, it's annoying, but fine. But I actually have something that holds me accountable. So it sounds really simple and really obvious. And ultimately the actual toolkit is by and large the same. I've got my own content calendar that works really well for me now. But my mindset around it has changed. So now I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is what I need to get done. This is why I'm doing it. And I'm kind of working backwards from a place of strategy. I'm working around launches. And we'll look into kind of how we can relate this back to you. I have a defined formula for posts and captions so that I have a lot more mental space for creativity. So all of these things remove the stress elements and give me really clear structures to work to. So it works very well for my brain. So how do we get creative with the solutions? We've looked at kind of how we're feeling, why we're feeling them, how do we actually fix them? So same slides, just so we can revamp. So time on the app, keeping up with trends, creating the content, actually posting the content. These are our 4 kind of main problems. We've established where they're coming from. How can we fix them? So if we're looking at a lack of planning and boundaries, we need accountability and structure. If we're looking at, I'm going to jump backwards and forwards, so if that's going to make you dizzy, please look away. This is how my brain works. If you're not knowing where to look, we want resources. There are so many resources out there that you can use for things like trends, reels, if that's what you're struggling with. That being said, the way that I tend to operate is that if you're consistently looking for trends, and I've got a slide on this and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it might be that you actually need to refocus. So rather than looking for consistent kind of resources on how can I keep up with the trends and consistently feeling like you're on the back foot, which really feeds into that stress cycle, it might be that you need to refocus on where you're putting your energy. So we'll dive into that in just a second. We'll cover that in a second. So skills gap, creativity gap. And this is from creating the content, right? If we're not sure how to get from creating the content to a place of less stress, it might be that you could do with some training. So if there's a skills gap, if you're not sure kind of how best to use Canva or how to actually create reels, that was something that came up in a course I did last week. It really depends on where you're at in your journey, because I know for some of you, like, you're really, really competent. So all of this, you need to take this guidance and look at how to implement it for your own toolkit and where you're at. But it might be that there's some training needed. But again, it might be that we need to refocus. It really depends on what your specific challenge is. And then if your problem is overthinking and you're really getting stuck at that point of actually posting your content, and that's what feels stressful, I would really encourage you to shift into a more community first mindset. This is something that really changed the game for me, and it really enabled me to get out of my own head and put the value first. I'm throwing a lot of buzzwords at you. So actually, let's dive into what each of these things mean. So for accountability and structure, this is what I mean by that. So it might be that you want to schedule time for each step of the process. When it comes to this, so this is the time on the app. If you find that you're spending loads and loads of time on the app and just hours, right? Scrolling on Instagram, getting really stuck with it, you need more accountability and structure. So this might look like, and this is again something that I've implemented, is actually mapping out your time in the day and treating this the same way that you would do if you were working with a client or a customer of yours, actually putting time into your diary and saying, right, this is my time for researching on Instagram and looking for inspiration, if that is how you like to operate, or this is my time for content writing, and you give yourself an hour and you stick to it. Something that I really like, that I found really helpful recently, is the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if any of you have heard of it or used it before. As an app, it's great. The way that my brain works, if I give myself a really guarded, boundary protected amount of time to do something, that then allows my brain to really switch on into it and then switch off when I'm done. And it also helps you protect your time and means that you're not sat there at 9 p.m. scrolling still and then thinking, oh, I should be doing this for work. Oh, I should be logging on and checking this, because I've been there. It sucks. It doesn't help, and it's not conducive to like personal life and work life boundaries. Which leads me to my next point, setting really clear boundaries around your time. A lot of these points, and a lot of this talk is, as much as I'm saying I'm not your therapist, a lot of these tips are quite holistic. So I could very easily dive into a lot more of the specifics around like how to talk about reels, or a lot more of the strategy. And there is definitely a time for that. And we can dive into that in the workflow workshop section at the very end of the Q&A. But a lot of these slides are very holistically minded, because so much of this, if we're talking about stress, is going on in your brain. So you need boundaries. You need to schedule time for each step of the process, break it down if you need to. So ideation, design for your grid posts, or like recording for reels, caption writing, scheduling, and then once it's scheduled, it's done. So break it down, small chunks, boundaries. Find a workflow that suits you. So I'm kind of talking you through my workflow and the way that I have broken things down. But if this is what you struggle with, and the accountability and the structure aligns to what you wrote down in that first section of what feels sticky for you on Instagram, try a couple of different things. You're welcome to use my workflow. I can kind of map that out for you. It's actually very simple. And stick to it and really hold yourself accountable. Set specific goals for yourself. Put it in your calendar. Do whatever you need to do in a way that works for your brain. But start there, work backwards. And working to specific goals. So this really ties into the accountability. So for me, as an example, I like to work backwards from my launch. So if I think back to when I was sitting there staring at that really empty blank content calendar and feeling really stressed, right? Populating it from like today onwards, I find very difficult. I don't know why, my brain just works that way. What I found significantly easier was when I then flipped it, basically, and I said, okay, I want to do X on this date. And for me, it's usually around a launch. So if I'm launching something free, if I'm launching something paid, or I know that I want to do something for my community, I put in a specific date and then I work backwards from that. So as an example, what am I launching soon? I've got a free content calendar resource, that my content calendar that works for me on Notion. I'm launching that soon. So I put a date in for that and I say, okay, I want 2 weeks to kind of promote this to people. So I put a date in that's 2 weeks ahead of time, and then I work backwards. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure that I've posted about this on my grid. I want to have done a reel about it. And that makes it so much easier for me to then actually start putting things in the content calendar, breaking it down so it feels a lot more manageable, and then creating smaller steps for myself. And because of the way that my brain works, I have to literally go like really, really granular. So you have to find something that works for you, but follow that same kind of mentality of, okay, how can I make this more achievable for myself? If we're looking at resources, and if this is your challenge and you're struggling with keeping up with the trends and you feel like you're constantly on the back foot, I would start with a question. Why are you looking for the trends? It might be that this has worked for you before. This is where I can bring in a bit more of the Instagram kind of insight. There are some people that trends work incredibly well for, and there are a lot of people that have built their entire Instagram presence around trends, following trends, whether it's the trending music, whether it's like actual dancing Instagrams, although I feel like they're less of a thing now, depending on which space you're in. But there are a lot of people that works really well for. But what I would say for the large proportion of businesses, especially in more recent months, is that we're shifting away from trends. And this is the case on both Instagram and TikTok. The focus is very much around, okay, how can you connect with people? So whether that is you kind of talking directly to camera and actually sharing value, I would unpick a little bit, why are you looking for trends? What value does that hold for you? Are you actually connecting with your audience? Are you speaking to the right people? If that is the case, then great. There's a lot of resources that you can use. My final point, final bullet point down here, there are resources that you can lean on. The Reels report, which I think is run by somebody called Laura, I haven't used myself, but I've heard very, very good things about. So if you're really dead set on trends, there are things that you can use. But leaning on trends always is going to bring you into this like race, I guess, of how can I keep up with this? How can I like follow this? And even the language that I'm using now, right? That always means that you're on the back foot. So even if you are using trends regularly, I would really encourage you to look at, okay, how can I create things that are purely mine? How can I, rely on a trending style of reel or whatever once a week, and then create my own things that center around specific purpose-driven, community-led value the rest of the week, so that you're not 100% trending, because that's always going to put you in a state of panic. Training. Okay, so this is where I said it could be a skills gap or a creativity gap. And this is where if you struggle with creating the content, and that's where you find you get stuck and you start to feel more stressed, these are some of the questions that I would ask myself. So is it a skills thing? And by that, I mean, are you logging onto camera and you're not sure how to format things, or you're not sure kind of how to actually put things onto a page, or use Instagram stories or use Instagram reels? Is it a skills gap? Because if it is, there are so many trainings that I could direct you to that are available to you that are both free, paid. There is so much information out there that you can use and work with. That is arguably more easily fixed. A creativity gap, that is when you know what you're doing. This is what I had at the time. It wasn't that I didn't know how to do it, it's that I didn't know how to execute. So I wasn't sure of who I was speaking to. I knew like how to format sales copy and write strong captions, but I was like, I don't know who I'm speaking to. I don't know my direction. So that is a slightly more nuanced one, but you have to go back to your why. And if you're running businesses, I'm sure that this is something that you've heard before, but essentially it's unpicking who am I speaking to and how am I providing value to them. And that's a very big thing, and I could very easily do a whole like separate session on that. In fact, I probably will. But that's a much bigger problem. But the skills gap is slightly more easily fixed. But both of these, once you've identified what the challenge is, you can problem solve from there. My dog is trying to get in the door and I've locked it and she's going to be very upset. So final one, again, this is something that I've struggled with firsthand. So this is when, baby, it's okay. I've got a very large dog outside and she's very concerned that I have had the door closed for longer than she's used to. So
I think she just wants to join in.
She just wants to be involved, but that involves me getting up, and I'm now settled and comfortable.
Yeah, fair.
So this final one, the community first mindset, I'm going to go and let the dog in, but I'll keep talking to you guys. And maybe you guys can meet Bailey. So this is when you start overthinking about the actual posting of the content. Do you want to come in and say hi? Come on then. There you go. I don't know if you guys can see. She's quite large. Hi, I need to sit back down. Can I sit back down? Thank you. So.
Hi, Paul.
Are you going to see? And now she wants to go again. See? Pickle. Right. So if you get stuck at the point of posting, it's a mindset shift. So much of this, it could be imposter syndrome, it could be the fear of being judged. Both are completely valid. but both are things that you really need to work on if you are going to step into your kind of presence as a business owner. There's no way around it. It's a lot of mindset work, but the way that I have looked at this is shifting into a community first mindset. So look at who you're doing this for. And I say the person as opposed to the people, because I want you to get really clear on one specific individual rather than thinking of, okay, I need to, get to X amount of followers before I can do this, or, I don't get enough likes on my posts. And what if this only gets like 5 likes, 10 likes? That's embarrassing. People are going to see. You need to focus on your one person. The way that I have always found the most success is when I think, okay, if this helps one person from the people that I am aiming to support, if it helps one person, and maybe they don't even like the post, maybe they just see it, but it helps them, my job is done. That's why I'm doing this. So that helped me kind of remove the ego a little bit. And it comes up a lot still, right? It comes up so regularly. But these are the kind of things that I ask myself when I do find myself getting stuck on that. So get back to the person that you're doing this for. Who are you speaking to? Who are you helping? Get clear on what you're trying to achieve. So what are you trying to do for that person? If you are a PT, for example, is your goal to get them moving at home? Do you want to give them free workouts? Do you want them to come into your studio? Where do you want to get them? And is the content that you're creating helping them get there in some way, shape, or form? If the answer is yes, great, post it, because that you're back to the person you're doing this for. It's supporting them, you're providing value, go. Get a scheduling tool. So this kind of a little bit ties into the structure piece. And 2 that I recommend is Later or using Instagram natively. Both are very helpful. But the benefit of a scheduling tool, especially if you struggle with mindset, is that you're not hitting post. And Instagram has recently rolled out, you can auto publish reels. Fantastic. So you can do all of this when you're kind of in the zone, really excited, you've written the content, you're feeling really good about it. You schedule it, you do not think about it. It's done. So you're not having to sit there at like 6 p.m. and hit post and overthinking, after you've been out or you've had a really crappy day. It's done. It's getting posted. Stunning. And the final one is get out of your own way. This really goes back to what I said at the beginning. There's only so much work and so many courses that you can do and so much other kind of external stuff that you can listen to. Ultimately, it's about you. You have to be the one that says, right, I'm going to post this. I don't care if it doesn't get that many likes. I don't care if this may not be the post that gets the most traction. It's not going to be the one that goes viral. Fine. But if it helps one person, great, it's out there. And I'm going to keep kind of persevering with it. So yeah. So let's focus a little bit on what's important. You need to get really clear for your audience. Something that I really focus on with this, and this is a little bit where I kind of do the zooming out exercise, I do this a lot with my clients, is it's so important with things like this that you are being really specific with what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. So this is something that I actually had until relatively recently, right? So what's a good example of this? I had a client who was a coach for nail technicians, but coaching essentially. And she was like, I'm spending upwards of like 8 hours a week on Instagram, just trying to like get content and pushing out loads of stuff, but it's not landing and I don't know why. The first thing that I did was I went to her page on Instagram and I was like, okay, so looking at your bio, I'm not super clear on what it is that you do, if I'm being perfectly honest. And secondly, the link in your bio takes me to, I think it was like a very specific workbook. And I was like, you have all of these amazing resources. You've got this really great Facebook group. You have got loads of free resources as well that are available. You also have a coaching course that you're currently not directing people to. So none of this is very clear. So regardless of how much time you're actually putting into your Instagram content, you're not giving people anywhere to go. So as much as this is where the kind of the strategic side of things comes in, you could be so stressed about your Instagram, but actually there's no point even being stressed about your Instagram if you haven't kind of put your attention somewhere else as well and made sure that everything is optimized and everything is as up to date as it can be. And you're giving people somewhere to go. So that is equally as important to look at. as all of the things that we're discussing now. The way that I tend to say this is that you could have like the most epic fucking reel, and you could have spent hours looking at the specific timings of your reel to make sure that everything, like all of the beats match up and like everything changes at exactly the right time, and it's stunning, it's great. But that means sweet fuck all if people land on your page and they're like, oh, okay, well that was a really cool video, but I don't know what she does. I don't know where I'm supposed to be going. So focus on kind of your core things first. Make sure that you're clear with what you're doing. Your bio is up to date. You have really clear steps of people. You've got a really clear journey for them. Then focus about Reels timings, like to your heart's content. Spend hours on them. Do what you want. Then being yourself is the easiest and also the hardest. So this is something that I'm finding a lot more recently. So I don't think I mentioned this at the very beginning, but my two platforms I operate on are Instagram and LinkedIn, which is a bit rogue for some people. I used to hate LinkedIn. I used to think it was really lame and boring and bland and beige and full of like men in suits, and was just really crap and corporate. Turns out it's having a bit of a moment, and there's a lot of people on there now that are actually sharing really fun stuff, depending on what space you're in. So what I do in that space is I build people's personal brands. So I work with a lot of tech founders actually in LinkedIn to do some really epic storytelling. And this relates to both LinkedIn and Instagram in terms of actually showing up as yourself. It's the easiest because once you kind of get into a groove with it and you really get your head around it and you're like, okay, this is me, this is what I do, this is why I'm here, it feels so flowy. It's so easy because then everything that you're writing, you're not second guessing yourself and thinking, oh, how would this person write this? Or should I be structuring this differently? Or, oh, this person had a lot of success with this last week and got loads of likes, so maybe I should do it that way. When you're showing up as yourself, so much easier. But getting to that point is really fucking hard. And you have to kind of do battle with all of the ego stuff and am I good enough? This is uncomfortable for me. That person that I went to school with is going to see this and they're going to think, what the fuck is she doing? Like, who does she think she is? But you have to show up as yourself. Find your expertise. Use language that you really like. For me, that's swearing and like using loads of brackets and things because I'm literally like, it's like my brain on a page. Using the little asterisk because it's like a side thought for my brain. All of these different things are part of what make up my tone of voice. That's what I'm looking for from you, is like show up as yourself, be authentic, do things that set you apart, and don't worry about that coming off as unprofessional or not quite right. That is what's going to really compel people to work with you beyond, or above somebody else. Boundaries. This isn't a fun purple color, but it's actually so serious. I literally couldn't say this enough. So much of social media now and the way that we operate is you have to set boundaries for yourself. My screen time used to be through the roof. It was like a real problem. And especially with social media being my job as well. Oh my God, I was hours. So much of my life, it was on a screen. That's insane to me. So you have to be really, really protective of your time and your energy. And whether that means that you need to do the scheduling or you need to like delete Instagram off of your main page so that you have to actively like find out what works for you. But you have to set boundaries, especially as a business owner. It becomes infinitely more important when you're having to use social media platforms, which are inherently kind of a time suck for your business. You have to set boundaries for yourself. Okay, so quick check-in because I have been talking for a hot minute now. What 3 things are you going to do now? This might be looking at your schedule, looking at where you're currently spending a lot of time and where your brain currently goes. And a really good kind of a piece of advice for this is looking at your notes that you made at the very beginning. I'm thinking, okay, based off of this, what can I do now to start removing some of those stressful pieces? So I'm going to give you a sec to do that. Okay. All right. So if you're feeling like this is tricky or you aren't quite sure what your next steps are, I'm opening up the floor. So we can format this however we want. I'm just diving back into the chat now, which is fun. But this is your opportunity to ask a specific question. If you get stuck on a certain part, or you would like me to look at your Instagram, give you a bit of a kind of mini audit, the floor is open. Also, Gemma, I love that you're still outside. That brings me so much joy. I'm going to start off by just catching up a little bit with the chat. So, Kat, you get stuck on what to post on stories. I feel you. You need to connect. So, Kat, can you, I don't know if you're in a position to unmute, but if you can you run me through a little bit of what it is that you do and where you are platform-wise?
Okay, so I have 2 different Instagram accounts. One of them is for my business, which is relationship coaching and inspiring people to live a romantic life. And then my other platform is like more personal / influencing. Like I'm trying to get into more influencing, and it's all about accessible luxury, I would say, like living a life of luxury without necessarily spending the money that usually is associated with that word, like creating it as a feeling. So I feel like I have a lot of ideas. I have a pretty clear idea of what my message is. But I really get stuck on recording myself talking, like how to start even, because I like talking. I even like want to start a podcast. Like I have things to say, but when I put the camera in front of me, I'm like stuttering and like feeling dumb and not knowing what to say, and also just choosing what to post. Like, I feel like I overthink everything. I'm like, I could post about what I'm eating, I could post about my workout, I could post about what I'm wearing, I could post about a tip or a more like substance. And I'm like, well, I have too many ideas, I don't know what to choose. So I'm just closing the app because I'm stressed and go to something else.
I hear you. That makes sense. Okay, I am so curious about your business. I think this sounds really interesting. Are you currently posting, what does it look like at the moment for you to post stories for your business? If you are posting.
Yeah, like it's very all over the place, which is what I tend to just repost things that other people have created, which I know is not necessarily the best because it's sticking people out of my world, but it's a way for me to kind of curate what I want to say without having to put too much thought into it. And whenever I post more personal things, it's going to be like a picture of me doing something that I try to relate to, like this romantic feeling, like romanticizing life, or it's going to be little polls about topics that I would like to talk about to kind of see if people are interested. The thing is, I just started. I have like 6 posts on there or something. So that even like that connection piece is hard because I don't have a lot of people. So I don't really, know how to go from there.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Okay. What I would say with this, and something that I found quite helpful, has been, firstly, I think the polls are really great, but I would look at what are you doing with that information? So is that helping guide your decisions? Are you using that information to then think, okay, well, this is what my audience, whatever size it is at the moment, is that what they want to hear about? And can I turn that into a post? I think that's great. And I love that you're getting that data and that feedback from people straight off the bat. I think that's wonderful. When it comes to actually posting stories, I'm a really big fan of stories. I haven't, over the last kind of year, I would say, posted a ton to my feed, but I've always shown up on stories. Quite often it can feel a lot more accessible because it is only available for 24 hours. The algorithm works slightly differently on how people are displayed stories as opposed to feed content. So in many ways, I think it's a really great way of bringing people into our ecosystem a bit more and letting them get to know us. So especially for you at the stage that you're at, I think that's a really important piece. When it comes to actually knowing what to post, though, I know that it can feel a lot more sticky. So what I would suggest for you is probably looking at something that you already have in your routine. Have you heard of habit stacking?
Yeah.
So I kind of weave that into the way that I create content. So for you, it might be, every day looking at, okay, what's one thing that I'm doing today that is romanticizing my life a bit more? whether it's, you know, taking an extra second when you're making your morning coffee or your tea to just pause and reflect, or I don't know, making dinner for yourself and actually setting the table up. Whatever you choose to do, moments like that ticks so many boxes. I feel like that would be a really great kind of theme for you to lean on with stories, because it's partly something that you're doing already. So hopefully it's something that's slightly easier for you to share, and it doesn't have to be a talking kind of head thing that you have to feel like you give loads of energy to. It can literally be snapping a picture and then just adding a bit of blurb over the top, but it's something that people can learn to expect from you. So it ticks the box of letting you show up consistently. It also ticks the box of letting people get to know you and having that little kind of micro insight into your day, which is going to build that connection. And that's what's going to really help foster that sense of community for you. So I think that would be a really great space for you to kind of grow from. How does that sound?
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's actually, it definitely takes like the anxiety away if it is based on things I'm already doing, because I feel like I stress out over like taking time out of my day for, I feel like everything takes time, and it's sometimes it's like really overwhelming, like what you were saying, like the time spent on the app, like between the researching and the writing and the recording. It's I feel like my whole life is Instagram, and I'm like, but my real business is then not advancing because I'm not working on that. So
yeah, no, I so hear you. I've grown quite a lot on stories, and something that I've started doing, which I don't do every single day, but I do a lot of the time, is I do a little checklist of what I'm up to. So my personal Instagram is my business Instagram, I guess. And I just do a checklist. I'm like, this is what I'm up to. This is what my calendar looks like. Sometimes it feels really boring because a lot of the time it's like I'm walking the dog and I'm scheduling stuff, but it's something that I think people have learned to see from me. And off the back of that, I've had people message me like, oh, I see that you're doing these calls now. I'd love to book in. So you'd be really surprised at just how much it can kind of bring out and how much connection it can bring with people.
Yeah.
I have to say as well, Nicole, I see you doing that and I absolutely love it. I've seen a few people doing it, and I know it's like a way of, I guess, a way of like soft selling as well, like showing what you're up to without screaming about it and being like, hey, buy this, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of addictive to see that. Like if I've definitely got into the routine of like seeing what you're up to each day and seeing your tasks, and I love it. It's my favorite thing. And how you use your stories and how you use like casual language, like you really show your personality. I feel like I knew exactly what you were like before even speaking to you, and completely just trust what you're saying, because you just come across like the things that you'll talk about in your like daily schedule. It's really relatable, like standard things that people are just up to, and that's really refreshing and really nice. So I think that's such a good idea for you, Kat, just to show what you're up to a bit more and show how you're romanticizing your life. And I definitely love to see that, and I'm sure so many other people would as well. It might seem boring to you because you're in it and you're talking about that, but it's interesting. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, no, totally. Like already straight off the bat, you talked about your business and you told us what you did. I'm already intrigued. Because so much of this is you just actually sharing more with us and actually putting out there a bit more, because I'm curious now. I want to know what you do. I'm like, okay, well, do I want to check out the website? Like, do I want to go on her Instagram? So yeah, showcase, put yourself out there.
Thanks.
Okay, how's everyone else getting on? How did you find the kind of exercises? I'm going to open it up.
I'll go. Yeah. So, I found it really good. So it was nice actually writing down at the start compared to like how I was feeling at the end of when you went through everything. So what I wrote down at the start with how I feel about like We Got You Boo's Instagram is that I just feel like I feel a bit messy about it, and I feel a bit like there's no structure. There's absolutely zero structure. I go into it, I don't exactly feel too overwhelmed, but sometimes I definitely do. But I think just because I have this whole thing of not seeing We Got You Boo as a business, so it's more just a general mindset thing where I love what we put out there and it just excites me, and it's more like a passion type thing. So I don't really have as much of a block, but I do feel like it's a bit messy. So then the 3 things that I'm going to do now, I wrote down: set boundaries for screen time, which is a biggie because I definitely get stuck in the scroll hole, and then you start like comparing and you're thinking you should be doing a billion things, and then you end up doing absolutely nothing. So definitely setting the boundaries for screen time. Have set times of looking versus creating versus engaging, like set more of a structure, which I was saying before, I definitely don't have that kind of brain either. So I definitely don't like work in a structured way, but I need to do that more. So I'm going to do that. And then the last thing is to show myself more, because I know that needs to be done and I don't always love to do it. And I have the same thing as Kat, where I'll like start to take a video and then it's like I literally lose all brain cells and can't speak, and it's so weird. It's like, oh, I don't know what to say, no one cares, and you start going a bit crazy about it. So they're the three things that I'm going to do now. And it's just nice to, like, even though we can kind of, you could Google this and probably read the same thing, but it's so nice to hear it from you and hear how, you know, just like explain it a little bit more to us. And it makes so much sense what you've said. So that's really helpful. So thank you.
I'm so
You're
excited to
awesome.
see more. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to see more from We Got You Boo. I also
Yeah.
want to hear more about what you're up to.
I personally, I think the biggest takeaways from your talk is the comments you made about trends and following trends. So I find Instagram a really intimidating space, and the business that we run, it actually consumes my time full time. So thinking about social media is like an afterthought. And we took a girl on temporarily, sort of as a trial to run our social media. And I found it made me feel more stressed about it than it did in the beginning, because however much we tried to go over it weekly, you know, the schedules and what was going to be posted, every time I saw the post come up, I felt like I was lying because it wasn't me talking. And even if we would, you know, tweak the captions that she'd suggested, for whatever reason, as soon as she posted it, it didn't feel authentic at all, to the point where I thought this is consuming more time trying to edit everything that this girl is doing. And she was working so hard and she had all the best intentions, and she obviously was more onto it with everything, but she was very trend oriented, all these trending tracks, all these trending things and reels, and all of it to me just seemed so contrived. And when you're in a space that's competing with similar industries that have outrageously high quality content, you just end up being that person who's like lagging behind and trying really hard. And it was just like something that didn't sit well with me at all. So we decided to reduce the amount of posts and just keep her on for that period of time, but use the post that she did to extend it out, just so we had something being posted amongst our other posts, which is just information, like it's a job board. So there's no traction there for gaining followers or trends or anything like that. It's just a job board. It's a recruitment company, which is not the most exciting or creative space to create content around. But now in a position where either we're at this juncture where either we try and take it on ourselves and perhaps we post less, but it's more real, and we just present as ourselves, or we're looking at hiring somebody else who perhaps relates more closely to us. But getting lost in the trends, it's nice to hear you say that, because for me, it just seems like, I think you used the word race. It feels like something that we'll never keep up with. So it's how do we post something that is relevant to the audience that we're trying to capture, because you know, you can have however many followers, but for us and for driving business, there need to be relevant followers, and there needs to be people that are invested in our industry and directing traffic and the crew to our site and seeing the jobs that we're posting in the attempt to have a greater volume of applicants for those positions. So yeah, it's either we try to take it on ourselves and know that it's not, it might be like Lydia was saying, she feels We Got You Boo is messy. I don't think it is at all. I love everything that is posted. I think it has such a nice real feel about it, and perhaps we do that and it's posting less and the grid is all over the place, but it's more true. Or we take someone on who hopefully can try and speak as authentically as possible and relate as closely to us as possible. So I really appreciated that that part of it. That's my biggest takeaway.
No, I'm pleased. I think that's really really valuable, and it is always going to be really difficult if you have somebody else doing it. And I've been in this position before. It can be the perfect post and you can have all of these really great pieces of content going out, but if it doesn't feel in alignment, then it's never going to sit quite right with you. So I think it's so powerful that you recognize that, and you're like, actually, this isn't working. How can we create something from this?
Yeah, I mean, we grew in following, it did gain traction, but everything about it just felt really sticky. And it's not something for me that I think when I look at it that it represents us in any way, which doesn't matter to our audience because they don't necessarily know us, but for me personally, it doesn't fit right.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair. I mean, something that is potentially relevant for you, Lydia, as well, and possibly you, Gemma, is, and this may be something that you've already seen elsewhere, but yeah, this shouldn't be news to you, but it's something that I still have to get my head around, is the aesthetic grid is kind of out. Like, it's old school now. Yeah. And I, as a designer by nature, I find that so difficult to like navigate. But it's true. It's so much about the connection piece. So there's so many people that are having so much success. And actually, Gemma, my very first marketing job out of uni was at a recruitment firm, a job board, marketing job board. So I know the struggles of trying to like sex up job boards. Yeah. It can be really challenging, but there are some people that are doing it really, really well. And all of the ones that I've seen really thriving with it are the ones that like create more of a persona, whether it's talking about like the challenges of being a job seeker and like relating to people that way. But really like doubling down on, okay, who are we speaking to and what are they dealing with at the moment? Like the job market is really tough. A lot of them probably feel like they're like, you know, applying for a million things and getting no feedback. Like, how can we really pinpoint that? A lot of them may be struggling with like how to format their CV and like trying to use AI. I don't know, I'm in a tech space at the moment, so a lot of that stuff is like in my ecosystem. But like really just like doubling down on, okay, where are they at? How can we address that problem? Because you have such a unique perspective on both sides, right? Like the job seeker side of things, you're probably getting feedback from them, but also from the companies. So how can you use all of that information that you have at your disposal to create some really cool content that's really, really useful? I'd maybe start there. Is it still okay to want, totally still okay to want things to look pretty? And I think there's a way of, and this is something that I'm going to be weaving into my content on Instagram, is you can have things look cohesive without feeling like you're stuck because of the content. Like something that I was stuck with last year is I wouldn't post a grid post because it didn't match with like my nice little like checkerboard thing that I have going on, or it didn't quite fit the aesthetic. So I'm like the worst with that. It's such a problem for me, and still to this day I struggle with it. But what I'm weaving more in now is the idea of cohesiveness through, like, I mean, this is going to sound really like lame, but like the clothing I wear and some of the colors. Like if I have a brand photo shoot coming up, side note, quick promo for my friend's business, if anyone is like around the UK, London based, she's just opened up the self-portrait studio that is to die for. And it's
was
like
this the Cookie Monster?
Yes, if you've seen the picture of me wearing like a massive blue fluffy
gorgeous
thing,
absolutely love those.
you can basically go and take pictures of yourself like for your business. It costs like, I think it's about £60 for an hour. It's so much more affordable than having a photographer. I can't even express to you. So with that in mind, the way that I kind of lean into my more like really anal designery visual brain side of things is when I know I'm going to be recording, I might not have like a beautifully designed cover for my reel, but I'm probably wearing something that fits with my brand colors, or I have something that I don't know, a font that I use for all of my reels covers, so that I'm still ticking that box for myself of like, oh, it's cohesive, it kind of works, but I'm not locked into this structure of like, it has to look a certain way, because that's just not where it's at. And if that's what's holding you back from posting content, that sucks. And you're not going to get anywhere. And I'd rather post the content and have it be valuable, and maybe it doesn't look 100% perfect, as opposed to just like creating all of this really cool stuff and then never using it. It sucks. So, but no, I struggle with that massively. I so get that. And I was thriving in the era where Instagram was like, everything is aesthetic and the grids look perfect. So I hear you. I totally hear you. Right. I have gone a minute over. I always do this. But I am available and here if anybody would like to ask me any questions. I totally appreciate if we need to jump off.
Is anyone else? We're all good? Oh, Nicole, that's been so helpful. Really
Pleasure.
appreciate you doing this. And I'm sure it's going to have a lot more people reach out to you afterwards as well, because there's so many who were dying to jump on but haven't been able to make it. So I'm going to share the recording Friday, so tomorrow, with everyone. And yeah, be ready for a big flood, because there's probably going to be loads of questions that everyone's got. But yeah, really mega appreciate you, and definitely want to go to that that space in. Are you based in London now?
So I'm going to be based. I'm going global. So I'm moving to Cyprus in a month, and then I'm off to Portugal, and then I'm moving to Bali later this year. So I'm.
Are you moving to Bali?
Yeah, and then back to the
Amazing.
Philippines, where I've just come from. When Bali goes into rainy season, because I am a sunshine gal at heart. So yeah,
Love
but yeah,
that.
if anyone has any questions or anybody wants to like get some feedback or anything comes up after this, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. That's the fastest way of getting hold of me, because as much as I am offline and I have boundaries, when I'm online, I'm online. So yeah, shoot me a DM. I would love to hear from you. And Kat, I really want to know more about what you're doing. So shoot me over a message from your business profile, because I'd love to see it. But yeah, I am going to go get some food and feed the dog. But this has been such a joy. Thank you so much for joining. It was really nice to meet you all.
Thanks, mate. Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
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 Oh, thanks, mate.
That was so much fun.
That was so